Hey all, welcome to the Skeptic Hangout, the place where we sit back, relax, and chitty chit chat about intriguing and sometimes controversial topics through the lens of skepticism. With us today is Laura McGee from Unapologetically Me, Richard Gill from the Yorkshire Atheist, and very special guest, Puck from the ACA and Epistemology.
Hi, I'm Puck.
Can you guess what we are going to be talking about today?
Yep. You know what? Let's. I don't know. Well, I don't claim to have this superpower, but I suppose based on previous information that I have and just plain guessing from what you guys have been talking to me about for a while. I'm gonna guess that we're talking about making guesses.
Yes, no, yes, no, not at all. Yes. We're going to be talking about precognition. So grab your English tea or well, I'm sure you know what it is, and join us as we discuss, all that stuff. This is episode 26, Precognition.
And for anybody who is just listening to this, I hope you get a chance to. I will just have to describe this for you because Laura is wearing a shirt that I kind of want for myself. It says here in nice computer script. It says "Talk nerdy to me."
And that's my love language. My love language is nerd.
I want one of those, and I want one that says "Reading is sexy."
Reading
is
sexy. I like the one that says like. Something about your intelligence, like if you can read this, you're intelligent or something like that, but it's written all in leet. I love it.
Brilliant.
Oh.
Anyway.
Well, this is awesome. I finally get to work with you guys. This is fun.
Yeah, it has been too long, but we've held off as long as possible, and we just couldn't hold off any longer, and we couldn't think of any more possible excuses.
Apart from Jilva, who has abandoned ship.
Yeah, he was like, I got the best excuse. Internet problems. Yes. So no, actually, so for those who don't know, Puck is actually one of my personal friends. I actually refer to him by his real name when we chitty chat. So I have been really excited to do this since we first started, and I'm glad that we're finally doing it.
This is one of those episodes where I don't feel like I know much about the topic, and therefore will have limited sort of value to add to the conversation. But I'm guessing since
I need to.
Pug, did you sort of request this topic?
I did request this topic, and there's a lot of different places where I'd like to go with it. But I suppose, can I tell you guys my superpower?
Oh,
yeah, I have a superpower. I actually do.
Yeah.
If you couldn't have guessed by the name, I am a gigantic fan of ice hockey. Okay. And I go to a lot of games. I go to as many games as I can. I go all over the country trying to find games. And when I can't find games to go to, I subscribe to the NHL channel online so I can watch the games as they go. I watched every single playoff game that happened this past season. I love watching hockey. And my superpower is I can actually tell you a few seconds before when a goal is going to be scored. And so my friends have done this. I have been sitting next to someone. I say, "Oh, he's going to score," and then a few seconds later, he does. I have hockey precognition.
Precognition, so, not precognition. Precognition.
I have no idea how it's pronounced. I
like it. Let's say it precognition for the rest of the show because
precognition.
Precognition.
Between the three of us, we don't even know how we're going to pronounce "puck," so we'll go with that.
Puck.
So, I see the asterisk and I want to say pick.
Okay. So based on that, what do you guys think of my ability to have precognition about hockey goals?
I think you are a very, very dedicated hockey fan, for one. And I think that, and I've seen people like this before that it's like, okay, so my boys play Overwatch, right? And to me, when I see what's going on the screen, it is chaos. Like I don't know what the F is going on, how they can keep track.
It's just like visual noise, isn't it? When it's that going on.
Yeah. I love that visual noise, and it's a cacophony of visual noise. And I can't tell which graphics are which person's special abilities. And so my son will be like, "Yeah, mom, check out this special ability I have," and he'll tell me what it is, and then he'll be like, "Check it out." And he does this thing with his keyboard, and he's like, "Did you see that?" No. What color was I supposed to be watching for? Purple. There was something purple exploded, something blue exploded. There was like a yellow ring. There was some red fire. There was like fireworks. Which one was yours? Right. So I don't know. And I don't even know which character you were targeting or which ones died and which ones survived. Like, I don't know. But he can tell which characters did which special effects and which characters they did damage to with those special effects. And it all makes sense to him. And it's happening in the matter of a second or two.
And it's when you tuned into those fine details, isn't it, that other people might not otherwise be tuned into.
Yes. And he knows how to read what's going on. And so when I hear you saying that, I see that you know how to read the hockey stadium field rink. The hockey rink.
No, okay. See, and that's one of the ideas that I have about what people consider to be precognition. Is that they are so attuned to seeing things already because of experience, because they know what to look for that a layperson might not. I'm not 100% at it. So I'll call one and then it doesn't happen. But my guess is that one instance of this is that you are able to process information faster than you are aware that you're able to process the information.
It happens subconsciously.
Right. And so one way that people might interpret precognition is by saying intuition. I just see a situation and I have an intuition about what's going to happen. I hate the word intuition, by the way, just so you guys know. How do you feel about intuition? Just so I know what minefield I'm wading into here.
I don't feel like I have strong opinions on the word intuition, because I think, to me, it can be a thing, like a reasonable thing to actually have and describe having in a way. I don't know if that makes sense, but like you just have that gut feeling about something that like it's going to go this way or that way. But I think that's potentially different from precognition, because precognition kind of has hand in hand with the sort of supernatural. It's like not just using my natural senses. It's not just what I'm seeing that I'm piecing together. It's something more. It's something added. It's something extra.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So I almost wanted to be cheeky when you first asked, like, what is your feelings on precognition? And I would say, like, hate for any word is a bit of a strong adjective or like feeling to have. But yeah, I don't hate any word. But I think intuition has a very, very applicable meaning to it, kind of like what Gil was saying, where it communicates information. When you say, like, I avoided a car accident because I just intuitively just jerked it. Like, I didn't even think about it. My intuition caused me to jerk out of the way, and then I avoided whatever.
And I guess in that instance, what we mean by intuition is the fact that there were things that you subconsciously or sort of without thinking perceived and reacted to that you wouldn't necessarily have been actively trying to think about. And it's sort of that, the subconscious thinking and choosing what to do.
Or just kind of like a knowing, but not knowing why you know what you know. So like, there are people who are much more attuned to other people's feelings, and they'll be like, hey, I'm honestly not. And that's not to bag on myself or be too hard on myself, but I don't pick up on cues the way that other people do. And so if someone walks into the office and is like, oh yeah, I just sense that so-and-so is experiencing blah, 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 blah. I'm like, I didn't pick up on that. Right. But then I'll go and talk to that individual. And sure enough, they're like, oh, I just felt it. I just had a sense, I had a feeling. Well, they can pick up on changes that are so subtle to a person's behavior that maybe day-to-day people just observing them wouldn't even notice that little change. But a really intuitive person would see that small, subtle detail and say, there's something wrong with this individual. They're a little bit quieter than normal. Their sarcasm was a little more dry.
You would see the hockey players moving in a specific way, going in a specific formation. I don't know hockey, but they're doing whatever, and you see that goal is going to be scored. It's a similar sort of thing, isn't it? Those little things pick up subconsciously that sort of equals this is something that's going to happen.
It's basically like football, except with ice and a lot more violence.
I watch Doctor Who. I speak French.
But when you say football, you do realize that Gil thinks of like the little round ball in there and like kicking with the feet, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to speak. I'm trying
football,
to speak
not
Gil's
American
language.
football.
He's translating to me.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Just making sure that all the Americans and the Brits all understand what we're talking about.
Yeah, I was
Darker.
prepared for this. Like just off to my left over here, I actually have it immediately translates from Fahrenheit to Celsius for me. So like I
Fahrenheit
have it.
makes
I
more
was
sense.
ready for this conversation. We knew
Just in case
I was
Gil asked how hot it is outside at your place.
I was
I mean,
prepared. It was
80% of our
24 outside.
conversations
It
are
is 24
around
outside right
temperature.
now. So
Brilliant.
I'm good.
Okay.
I was prepared. Okay, so let's talk about the supernatural aspect because that's something that will be brought up also. The idea that you're sensing something other than using your mundane senses, right?
Yeah,
Now
so
this go
that
ahead,
is
please,
one
Blair.
thing. Well, I was gonna say that is one thing that Gil drew a distinction about earlier is when you were talking about precognition, like the claim that you have this trait. I don't typically see it compared to someone who just like knows instantly before something happens that it's going to happen. It's more like predicting things further in the future. Like I have this precognition that my mom is going to call tomorrow or whatever, or precognition that someone's going to get in a car accident at this time, right? It's not like I walked into a room and I observed something, and because of that observation, I was able to guess an outcome. Like, I don't know if that makes any sense, the distinction, but my understanding of precognition is like basically predicting the future, but less immediately in front of you and more like projected out into the future. Is that kind of a fair
That sounds
description?
great.
Okay.
And I actually want to put a pin in this because I want to come back to this later when we talk about the ramifications that precognition might have on determinism. Um, because if it is possible to predict the future to that degree and then the predictions are able to come true, that means that there's nothing that could have been done to prevent that from happening.
Right.
And then there's some fascinating ramifications there, which is its own entire episode. I'm not a free will person. I'm not a philosophy
Oh,
person.
we should do an episode on free will. That would be a
Oh.
great episode.
I have to imagine it just crossed my mind. Then I promise we'll come back to this. I have to imagine that in the course of doing an episode, you guys must have another 3 episodes to talk about just from
Every
the material
week.
that you got. From one.
Yeah. What's funny is if you
Every
guys ever notice me pausing and looking down a little bit while somebody else is talking, I'm actually typing into our list of suggestions, more suggestions. So I will type like they'll say something, like we're gonna record parenting next. So I'll just use that example. We'll talk. Oh, we should do an episode on parenting, and I get in there and I write parenting, right? So, and I'm sure that the Richards do it as well. But yeah, no, every episode.
Okay, so you guys plugged me before, so I don't feel bad plugging it again now that I work really closely with a show called Truth Wanted, right?
Yes.
And I love working with that show because a lot of the claims that people can make are testable, and precognition seems to be one of those things that's the most easily testable. You just tell us what to look out for, when to look out for it, and we'll see if it happens, right? And so when you bring up examples like, I just get a feeling that my mom is going to call. I suppose to me that seems really mundane because you could be, if you have a typical relationship with your parents as adults, you might think about your mom many times over the course of a day, right?
Yes.
And then when the event happens, I believe you're more likely to recall, oh, wow, just yesterday I was thinking about you calling and now you did call. How bizarre.
Yeah, it's a complete false correlation, right?
Yeah.
Like
You hear about animals that can predict earthquakes. Have you guys heard about this?
I've heard about it differently than precognition, though. I've heard that they have more of a sensitivity to the ground rumbling and they can feel it before we can. That's
I only know about it from films. When something bad's happening, the birds fly away. That's all I know.
Okay, you know what? They actually set up a hotline for people to call. I'm going to get the study for this. So you can link it in the description. They set up a hotline for people to call. If your animals start acting up, call this number and we'll see what happens. The problem is they never once got a call about an animal acting up and then an earthquake or an event happening after that. But they did get plenty of calls after an earthquake happened saying, hey, you know what? My animal was doing this just before.
Yeah.
So
that's
retrofitting.
It's one of those like, okay.
It's like a post hoc kind of thing. Like,
right.
After the fact. Yeah.
But I know what you're talking about. It's been glamorized in Hollywood quite a bit. What was in Titanic? They followed where the rats are going, right? So if it's good enough for the rats, it's good enough for me.
And what that fails to take into account is how often animals can even be wrong. I remember seeing a YouTube video about like cats, and they're like, well, people say that cats are like the most live creatures, right? And they like always land on their feet and stuff like that. And it was a huge compilation of cat videos of the cat screwing it up, right?
Yep.
Like how often cats fall and miss and slip and trip and like land on their backs. And so, I think that a lot of it could also be just an over exaggeration of animal like ability.
Mm-hmm. So but that's why of all the psychic arts, precognition is most interesting to me because it seems like it's the most testable, and it seems like if there was really something to it, we would have figured it out or figured out how to test for it. So I suppose one fun thing to do might be to brainstorm how can we find a way to prove if some supernatural precognition event is actually happening.
Yeah, so that's very. I'm gonna let Gil answer that one first because I just realized I'm steamrolling. Go for it, Gil.
No, I was just thinking. It's one of those times where it's like I feel like I will have an answer to this question, but I just need a bit of buffer time.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, because I guess if someone's saying that they've got psychic abilities in order to perceive things that are going to be happening in the future, it'd have to, I guess, be within specific parameters, wouldn't it? Like you can't just say I foresee cold, and so therefore three weeks later when it's a bit chilly, then you're like, yeah, that was my precognition. No, I think it would have to be something like specific, wouldn't it? Like to do with something that's like actually like linked to what, no, not linked to what you're doing, but as in like something that's going to be observable by whoever it is that's involved. So like either you've got to see it or I've got to see it, or we've got to get evidence of something. It's got to be, yeah, really specific and not vague, that can be interpreted as a million and one different things. Yeah, what else, Laura? You can add onto that list.
Yeah, I don't know, because I think that statistically, people can have that where they do guess something pretty dang accurately, especially if, like what we were saying earlier, they know how to quote unquote read the field. So if you think about in terms of say politics or economics or something like that, or current events, someone who is really good at seeing all the moving parts could very easily say like, oh, I think that like Somalia is gonna, like witness this in the next 2 months or whatever, and then they do.
Like
But
I think what you were saying about like link with current events and picking up details, like I think I saw in the news recently, and I'll get all the details of this wrong, but there was someone in like Australia, like in Queensland or somewhere, that predicted successfully for a certain number of consecutive days how many COVID cases they would have in the state. I can't remember how many days it was. It might not be in Queensland, but like one person could argue, well, they're successfully predicting what the next day's COVID case number is going to be exactly, and it was exactly like the right number every day. But then you think, but they've got data and sort of like lines of data about where that data's going, trend lines and all that sort of stuff that sort of builds into, well, it looks like this is going to happen. We know from the last wave this was this, and there's so much that can go into that answer of, and yeah, in a lot of cases, I guess, picking 61 instead of 62 was a lucky guess that time, and it just, worked for so long. But that doesn't necessarily demonstrate any sort of supernatural abilities to do something, even though in that case it was testable, specific, timely,
and repeated, right? If it was multiple days.
So I guess it would have to be something as well, wouldn't it, that's not going to happen under normal, everyday, understandable circumstances. Like it's got to be something that's not just bound to happen anyway.
Yeah, I think for the majority of the claims, they're just plain unfalsifiable. Like the correct guesses. So the correct guesses, I think, are majority of the time unfalsifiable. Like you just can't. Was it a lucky guess? Did you have data? Are you like really good at reading this specific thing, or do you really have precognition? But I think what really determines it is the false guesses, right? So what I'm saying is like usually the people who say that they have precognition, they make a lot of fucking guesses, like a lot, right? And they'll get a very, very, very small percentage right. So not everyone walks around like, I'm going to make one guess and that guess is going to be exactly right. And that's going to prove that I have precognition, right? They make guess after guess after guess after guess. So to me, like there might not be a way of determining, yes, this is true, but there's definitely a way of falsifying it based on the number of failed attempts. Does that make sense?
No, it does make sense. It's like, because there's 1,230 hockey games in a regular season, and it would be fairly simple but very time consuming to just make a chart of all the possible outcomes of a hockey season, right? Before the season starts. And I can get that done before the hockey season starts and just save all the files onto a hard disk or something. And then on the last day of the season, when the last game ends, I can pull up a document that I can prove I have never opened since I made it from before the season started, saying, look, I guessed all of these accurately. Way back then, before the season started, I knew the outcomes of every possible game. When really, no, I didn't get that right. I got it wrong like a million times.
Right,
and
but
I
here's
chose
my
the
collection
but
of
here's the one that I got.
exactly.
I get the same feeling too when there's like this lonely dandelion growing out in the middle of a sidewalk crack, and people are like, "Wow, look how resilient nature is. Life will always find a way." No, that's the one that grew out of the thousands of seeds that got
That didn't
scattered
grow.
and didn't show. So yeah, that one hit doesn't mean much to me. What would mean much to me is how do you come by this information, and that's where I think
Yeah.
that supernatural aspect might come in. And even if it's not like conscious, like how many people have you heard that they can, like, they say they can sense someone in the room? Have you heard this before?
Yeah. Or send
And
somebody looking at them or a presence. Yeah.
or yeah, or I could just tell someone was watching me or
Yeah.
something, right? This seems like the kind of thing you can test. Just take someone in a room, blindfold, nose plugs, take away all their mundane senses,
Mhm.
and sometimes somebody just happens to be walking behind them, and sometimes someone isn't. Can they
And
tell with any accuracy if there is actually a person behind them?
and you'd have to be able to tell what is statistically relevant, right? So let's say
Right.
you did that and you had it broken down to percentage. So let's say 57% of the time they guessed right and 43% of the time they guessed wrong. Therefore, they guessed right more often. Therefore, it supports precognition. Well, it
Mhm.
doesn't, though, because it is still pretty close to 50-50 and very, very close to chance, right?
Yeah.
And
And how
given
far away would you have to be in order to be like, yeah, that
Be
proves it?
detected, yeah.
yeah, and
Well,
what if
yeah,
you had a fluke where it was like 70-30 and it was just a fluke? And then you're like, oh, look at this data supports my claim. And it's like, well, it looks like it supports your claim. It appears to support your claim, but it's just a fluke.
right. You need a large enough sample size. Then
Yeah.
you need to compare it to something. So it's like, okay, we're going to run this test, except you can see this time. So we'll
Yeah.
compare how you do when you can see versus when you're not allowed to see who's
Oh,
in
I
the
like
room.
it.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, you can. And this is what fascinates me. I love coming up with, and I wish people would participate with more tests to see just how valid their claims are. And of all the times I've been on shows
Book didn't want to come on our show and talk. He just wanted to come on and get people to sign up to be guinea pigs in his weird psychic experiments.
yes, that's how this goes. I don't know if that $1 million prize is still there, but if it is, I want in on it.
Oh, it's funny that you said $1 million prize because when we were talking about precognition, the first person that I thought about to speak against, like for me, talking against precognition was the amazing Randy, James
Right.
Randy, right? And so he had this amazing, uncanny way of using like his abilities to demonstrate precognition. Now, he was the first to say, hey, this is fake. This is practiced. I have honed this skill. I know exactly how I do it. I'm not going to tell you guys all my tricks because that's part of like the whole magic thing, right? But I am telling you right up front, this is fake, that I am working on a skill and that I don't have any real precognition. And he was wicked good at it. There were times where I'm like, wait, no, how does that actually, like, there's no way that actually works, right? No, what? Right. But so when you have people like that who are, and there's a couple other of them too. I can't remember their names off the top of my head, but magicians who speak out against fraudsters, and they do
Darren
that.
Brown's a notable British
Darren Brown,
example.
thank you. Yeah, yeah,
Brilliant.
yeah. He's awesome. And Penn and Teller do a lot of that stuff too. They do a lot of exposure of that kind of stuff. Um, even our own like Matt Dillahunty is very very good at guessing certain things. Like I don't know if he's quite at that level where because theirs are very very intricate. But I've seen him do stuff just on air where he's like, well, hey, look, I'll show you exactly how I can do this. I would guess this and I'd be right, right? And the caller's like, yes, you're right. Well, here's why I came to that conclusion. Well, statistically this and usually that, and most people this, right? And just the fact that you can hone a skill like that and know that it's not true automatically makes anybody else who claims that it is true suspect to me. Because it's like, how do you set them apart?
They
What
would need
makes
to have something much, much sort of more significant in terms of evidence that it
right,
was, yeah, it was not just a skill that had been honed, a performance trait.
right.
See,
Yeah.
these are actually my favorite magic tricks. I love mentalism tricks where
Yeah.
somebody seems to be able to predict a series of apparently random choices, and it's fun watching, like being on the forefront of this and watching like the next trick or not the next trick but the most recent tricks, because what they'll do is they'll watch a bunch of times this has been performed before, and then they will say, oh, this is probably how they were able to find that information or how they were able to guess that information. So they'll make it just a little more impossible than the last person, right? And there's a continued one-upsmanship with mentalist magicians to the point where it seems like, yeah, it looks like everybody has a completely free choice of a million different things, and somehow they were able to not only correctly guess the outcome, but to present it in such a way that seems like it was impossible unless they had prior knowledge from a long time ago. Like, have you ever seen this? Like, they'll bring up a photograph or a newspaper clipping from, that has a date on it or something, and says, look, how could I possibly have known this on this date, yet here it is.
Yeah, and it's very what do you call it? Elegant, right? Yeah, it's very complicated and elegant where it is really hard to get at the bottom of how it actually works, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that it is a skill that can be so easily honed using just natural explanations, it really, for me, removes a lot of that supernatural woo-woo aspect of it. And I think, honestly, like, I wonder sometimes, and actually we'll save this for after the commercial break, because we're coming up on a commercial break.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're gonna, because we have to restart the video. Zoom likes to kick us off at 40 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're gonna do a quick commercial break, and then we'll get up on a new Zoom. And then what I'd like to talk about is like how you would, oh my gosh, I lost it. See, I do this, I start talking and I lose my point. Puck, this happens a lot, just trust me. Gil's used to
What
it.
I'd like to talk about is
let us know what you've got going on in the next, like, I don't know, couple weeks, month, like, but what's on your docket? What's on your schedule that people can tune in for?
Wow, they're really pushing the purple mohawk guy on the
schedule
ACA
from now till 2023.
Yes, everything.
They're really pushing me a lot on ACA. So I'm actually, I was on Secular Sexuality and Truth Wanted last week. I was one show away from doing the dreaded ACA hat trick. But I am actually scheduled to do another Secular Sexuality episode later this month. And then on in September, I'm scheduled to work in Truth Wanted with someone who I've been pestering to do a show with me since I started being able to do shows and getting to pester someone to do shows with. So I'm very excited. This is my swing for the fences interview coming up on Truth Wanted. Other than that, I stream on my YouTube channel every weekday at noon. I'm a avid player of the Final Fantasy series of games, and you can watch me struggle through that on my YouTube gaming channel.
Awesome. And I will link all of those. And if you're not doing Twitch anymore, if you want me to include your Twitch, I can. Otherwise,
I haven't decided what I'm doing with Twitch yet.
Okay, so I'll just include whatever links you give to me. So if anyone is interested in tuning in to Puck and his own stuff, look at the links below. Otherwise, keep your eyes out on the ACA schedule and see all the myriad shows that he's all over the place, people. Yeah. So I have one appearance coming up. Yeah. I took a pretty significant break when I went back to work, because at the time I was working full time, and now I'm back down to part time. So I'm slowly reintroducing myself to the live stream content creator environment. So I will be on Nonprofits airing on the 22nd. And I will weasel my way back into as many different shows as I can. I also am doing tomorrow night the fundraiser that Ethan has going for the ACA, and that'll be Saturday the 14th will be that show.
Oh, that's right. I'm in that too. I should probably.
Yeah, you should have.
You said tomorrow night, Laura, but this is in the past now.
Oh, that's right. Oh, okay. So those of you listening, I was on Ethan's the fundraiser that he did for the ACA. So go back to the ACA, check that out. There's lots of ways to donate to them. So if you didn't catch that show live and you didn't have a chance to donate, but you want to, there's a lot of different ways that you can help out the ACA, and they're a really fantastic organization. Gil, your turn.
Yes.
Jag, you're it.
Onto my schmoozing. I was a fan of your verb choice of schmoozing about the Facebook group because it is my usual job, isn't it? So yeah, my purpose here, ladies, gentlemen, and all other non-binary variations thereupon, is to convince you eloquently to join our Facebook discussion group, the official one, except no
substitutions, exchanges.
Substitutions.
Yeah.
Various words I can't think of. Yeah, our Facebook discussion group is a really good place to go and have some discussions about the episodes we've got coming up. We've given listeners and viewers the sort of option of what episodes they want. Feedback is great. And because we are such big celebrities, it's actually the place where you can exclusively get your hands on our thoughts and opinions in text form and interact with us personally. So it's an honor to be a member of the group. And so you should want that honor. And you can find that and the links to all of us on all of our different content outlets at our Linktree page, which is Linktree/Skeptic Hangout.
Fantastic. Yes, and it's all free, people. Okay, so now back to the show. I don't like the way I said that, so I'm gonna cut that. Actually, I'll leave it in because I love saying I'm gonna cut that and then not cutting it.
Never do.
Back to the show. Yes, nailed it.
Oh, okay. So just the reason I go by Puck is just purely organic. It just kind of happened where I just I had to come up with a name when I was just starting to do shows. My last name is unnaturally complex, and I have better things to do than to continue to explain my last name. Right? I don't mind who knows it. Like when I interact with people on Facebook, my name is out there, and I don't care who knows. It's just I know that as soon as it gets out, like every interview is going to start with, "Wow, that's a very unusual last name." Well, yes, in fact, only 17 people in history have ever had it. My cousin is about to give birth to number 18. Really,
oh my gosh, yeah.
To talk about than
whereas 80% of my conversations are just, wow, Gil is a very dull and short name. How overly simple.
No, my wife was happy to have it because she has a name that is so common that we actually know that there is someone else living in Cincinnati, in the city I live in, who has the same name, who was born in the same year and goes to the same dentist and the same gynecologist.
Oh, that doesn't cause confusion on records at all, does it?
It does.
Right, here's an anecdote that you can choose to leave in or cut out of the episode.
I'm leaving it in.
I had an abscess at the bottom of my back, right at the top of my bum crack, a few years ago, and I had to go into the hospital, and it had to be like all scooped out and packed. The wound had to be packed every day by a nurse, and so I went on to the GP surgery, the doctor's surgery on the road, to have it. I think, did I change my appointment or something? And when I was supposed to have my original appointment earlier in the day, they'd called out my name, Richard Gale, into the waiting area. And a man had gone in who wasn't me for an appointment that I had rearranged. And the nurse said, "Mr. Gill, do you want to just take your trousers down?" And he was like, "Why on earth do I need to take my trousers down?" And it was literally just someone who lived in the same town, who went to the same doctors with the same name as me, who happened to just be in the doctors when I had rearranged an appointment for. Small world.
Oh, my God. Awkward for him, hilarious for you.
Yes, indeed.
Good times. Okay,
so go. I can just go on forever, so just you steer.
No, I was. You know what? You can keep going on, but I just wanted to steer us back toward precognition. I'm really interested in the whole like the spiritual claim side of things, right? What I want to know is like, let's presume for a moment that it's fake. And that it's a skill that people acquire. There's not fake, but there's nothing spiritual about it. It's not otherworldly. It's a skill that can be acquired and learned and honed. Under that assumption, like I really, really strongly believe that there are some people who are convinced though that what they have is an actual supernatural or spiritual gift. So in other words, they are good at guessing or seeing or reading and coming up with conclusions. And they are accurate often enough that they can count those hits often enough that they feel good about it. But they're legitimately convinced that they have a supernatural power. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
There probably are a lot of people like that. I mean, where is it? We did get a call one time on Truth Wanted about someone who was convinced enough of their own abilities. And I suppose for a lot of it, you're right. Going back to what we were talking about earlier, there's probably it's not falsifiable. It's too much time has gone by to meaningfully examine it to find out when. But I can imagine very easily someone who gets it right often enough, and it doesn't necessarily need to be with no grounding. Like maybe they chalk it up to astrology or something, right? They can read someone's chart super well. I'll have to look back at the astrology episode that you guys have done. If you've done
But
one, have you done one?
I don't think we've done that one yet.
No, we haven't
Okay.
yet.
Well,
I
there
was
you
just
go.
going to say, I think it's interesting in a similar sort of field to people who might say, yeah, I believe in the power of prayer because I've seen prayer work in my life. You know, in terms of like it's anecdotal personal experience, which is happened in the past and isn't testable, like you said, Puck. But it's also one of those that they remember the things that they prayed for and that have happened, but they don't remember the things that didn't, which were multiple things over many years that they'll have prayed for that didn't happen.
Yeah.
I mean, the number of people who pray for world peace and whatever else in it,
Or the end of atheism. Sorry, guys, we're still here.
end of atheism.
Sorry. Hate to disappoint.
Well, I don't know.
yeah.
I had a moment of doubt last night, so maybe it wasn't completely useless. But I'm back. I'm in good form still. That it was just a momentary like tickle in the back of my brain. It's like, maybe I shouldn't be doing. No, I should be doing.
No. You know what happened is it probably started to work, and then just not enough people were praying, so God was like, nah.
People.
They obviously
weren't using the
they
exact
weren't
right
praying
words,
ardently enough, so clearly they don't care. So I'm gonna just let it go.
Yeah, if only they had like three. If only 3 more people had participated, Puck would have been completely turned around.
Right, the meter was crawling. It was in the green. It was crawling up into the yellow, and just where the red, it was like,
no, yeah, okay. Sorry, you're gonna have to put up with me as long as they're gonna give me a microphone. So, no, okay. So, do we have time to go back to determinism and what the or did you? Okay, so if it is in fact true that the future is something that can be seen, that implies that there is a set of events that cannot be they can't be stopped, right? This is going to happen, and nothing anybody can do from here on till then is going to be able to prevent that.
Yeah. So
how awkward does that make you guys feel just hearing that idea?
Not at all, because I'm pretty much
okay.
I'm a little bit of a determinist myself. Like if you think in terms of us being chemicals and molecules and stuff like that, and we react or we do things based on the movement of those molecules. I have heard, I can't remember, I think it was Daniel Dennett talk about how there is some room for flexibility within predetermination, right? That like not everything is exactly decided, but it's probabilistically decided. That is kind of where I lie with determinism, is like I pretty much like I am a bag of chemicals, and it's a messy fucking bag of chemicals. And so a lot of what
Great.
yeah, a lot of what is like presented as Laura or the personality is this really complex mix of like synapses and experiences and chemical reactions. And so I don't choose when I get mad. I don't choose the food that I like to eat. I don't choose which movies I like and which movies I don't like. Right? Like none of that is within my control. So when you say like, does precognition or the idea that precognition supports determinism, does that disturb you? No.
Okay. It's one of those things, like if I stop and think about it, that's a natural conclusion, but then it just, for no good reason, just makes me feel just slightly uncomfortable. The idea that no matter, like if I'm destined to be a rock star, it doesn't matter if I ever practice playing the guitar or singing, it's going to happen. You're just going to have a really terrible guitarist and vocalist up there on stage with what's left of Van Halen. So like the idea that I have no control over, like the actions that I do have no first of all, I can't really control my actions, as Laura said. You can't help when you get angry or not, but the idea that I can't meaningfully affect my future, that even if it's true, it's true. It makes me no less uncomfortable.
Which I had questions in that field when I was sort of in the midst of leaving Christianity, in terms of like, if God is omniscient and knows everything that will happen to me, do I even have a choice in the matter? And then it led me into thinking about things like prayer and praying for a different outcome of something in the future, but that's already been decided because God already knows what's going to happen and all of that. When you were talking before, Puck, about being able to see things that are going to happen and you can't stop it. I used to live on the top of a big hill. And the wind always blew towards our house. So if we looked out from where we lived, if it were ever raining over the town down in the valley, we could see that rain moving towards us. And it was like I could say very confidently, right, I know about 10, 15 minutes from now, we're going to get a load of rain. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing you could do to stop that rain coming towards you. But that sort of I don't know, that made me then think, if we've got this whole idea of people being able to predict future events supernaturally or spiritually or whatever, what would the mechanism for that be? I guess, what is the process through which that happens? Because I don't know. I mean, I'm not a physicist or whatever, but is it like something to do with like metaphysics, or is it, and I don't know if there is like a consensus about how that happens or what have you, but that sort of was the question that came into mind.
That's super exciting, because I was at lunch at work the other day with a couple of colleagues, and we were geeking out to things like dimensions and fourth dimensional beings, sixth dimension, and what dimension, or in which dimension can you control the dimension of time, and is time a dimension, all that stuff. So one thing we discussed was and this is all hypothetical, and we are not theoretical physicists, so this is very, very layman. Nevertheless, probably sounded geeky if you were overhearing us, but if you could somehow be, so you're saying, like, what is the mechanism? What is the way that can happen within this reality, actually, not just hypothetically? What I would think that the most eloquent explanation would be is some sort of thing that exists outside of the temporal dimension that can actually see all timelines all at once, right? Or maybe at least outside of our temporal dimension. I don't know if there's layers of time the way that there's layers of reality. I don't think so. But like, this is where it gets really confusing for me. Like, a being, in order to exist, needs to have time, right? It has to get from point A to point B, to take a breath, to have a thought, to speak, to do something, right? There's a beginning and an end to an action. So there has to be time to have an action. So how can a being exist outside of time and affect time, but still?
But that's the difference, isn't it, between like
right?
two-dimensional and three-dimensional? Like, if you were an object that existed in two-dimensional space, you can only see like
a shadow in the
way,
three-dimensional space,
and you can't even perceive the idea of depth or forwards and backwards. And us as 3D things, I guess, can't perceive what 4 dimensions might be. But if there was something that did have 4 dimensions, I don't know. Are we just talking about it? Is this just like a nonsense conversation?
Well, no, the whole idea is that, hypothetically speaking, the mechanism by which someone would have precognition or would know that something is going to happen in the future is some sort of access to something with, like, outside of our temporal reality that can access the whole timeline all at once, right? I don't, my hang up is, what would that be? Because as soon as you make it a thinking thing or a doing thing, like a mechanism or a being or a spiritual undercurrent that they are sensitive to or whatever, as soon as it has a beginning and an end, or a start and a stop, it requires time.
Yeah, that's very simple. You just build a chronoscaph.
Okay, super easy, done.
Yeah. Okay. No, there's this has been talked about. Like, you know what a bathyscaph is, right? It's a
no. Do you not know who you're speaking to?
Dude, you just lost us so hard.
Just build a chronoscaph. That's it. Okay. Anyway, a bathyscaph is a vehicle that's designed to move underwater, that has its own pressurized atmosphere. So basically a submarine.
Sure.
Right?
Okay.
Where you can exist for a long time underwater because you're bringing some of whatever conditions you need to survive on the surface, you're bringing it down with you underwater. Okay. So if you were able to build a chronoscaph, something that takes your temporal framework and brings it with you as you travel to a place that does not have a temporal framework that is suitable to your existence, now you can be there. Maybe you're contained, maybe you can affect what's in it outside, maybe you can't, but at least you can start to observe outside of time from a chronoscaph.
Okay, so
now I feel like we're having one of those, like, 2:00 in the morning gazing at the stars. I don't know what you're smoking.
Drunk conversations. Yeah. Oh yeah, dude, seriously. So, but this is good, because this really, I think, ties into precognition, because precognition deals with time. Like, I know something that is going to happen in the future. Well, like what you're talking about, predeterminism, can we even say that the future is hard set? And if it is hard set, how do we access that? How do we, like, we can, like, look at data on a hard drive, or we can, like, look at music on a sheet of paper, but you can't look into the future, right? So I think that this conversation is super relevant. But
thank you for the validation.
Yes,
I appreciate it.
Nailed it. I'll tie
it. Thank you for giving me an excuse to make up a new word.
Chronoscaph. Chronoscaph. Yeah. So that reminds me of the movie, the time traveler movie. Oh my god.
Which one? There's, like, I don't know.
Well, it was a book. The Time Machine. Thank you. Like, the most popular one ever, and I can't remember the name of it. Yeah, The Time Machine. Where literally that's what it was. Is it would create a bubble of his own reality, and he'd be able to move through the different timelines within the bubble of his own like life timeline. Like he didn't age, he didn't die, right? Like he was preserved in that bubble. But I
There's
just
a
don't.
very stupid reason why I don't believe that backwards time travel is possible. If I
Okay.
may share my very stupid reason.
Love it.
Okay. There was a time when flight was only for very specific people who had the right licenses, who had the right equipment. Not everybody could do it, right? Not everybody had access to it. But now you can go on YouTube and you can find out how to build an airplane. You can build your own ultralight. You can build your own vehicle that can fly. And let's also remember the story about the guy who tied how many helium balloons to his lawn chair and decided to.
Yes.
I wish I was making this up.
No.
Richard, I see you shaking your head, but yeah, there is a guy who did that.
Brilliant.
He just tied a whole bunch of balloons to a lawn chair.
Yep.
And he went on a pretty substantially long flight. So I imagine that time travel is probably the same way. If it is possible, it's first figured out by a very small select group of people, but then it gets to the point where any Joe can do it. And the first directive or the prime directive of temporal travel is thou must not alter anything in the past, right?
Oh, so now it's a rule. It's not a physics rule. Like, hey, we're not capable of doing it because naturally you can't do it.
But you just plain shouldn't do it because you could.
Like the NSA is going to come and knock down your door and arrest you for traveling back in time and changing this all back to that.
See, I get the feeling that if time travel was possible, some yuts in the future would already have done it and would have already gone back and already did something stupid, which would have greatly altered the timeline. The fact that I can predict that I'm going to be watching hockey in a couple of weeks says that nobody's done that yet.
So I would say we need to really have a full episode on time travel. That's what this tells me, because what you're saying is so fascinating. I really want to run off on it. So I think
I hope you come up with 2 episodes now. That's good.
Yeah, I am writing it down as soon as I find the right room. Yeah, but so I would say tying time travel back to precognition.
Okay.
I don't quite buy the idea that there's something that we can access that relays information to us by whatever means, but exists outside of time and can see the future, right? Like I just don't.
The sort of basis of the conversation we've been having just now, though, is arguably sort of peripherally physics, at least. Like we've been talking about things which are to do with the natural world and what we understand about it. But from my understanding, people who proclaim to have precognitive abilities don't frame it in that sort of context. It's more in a spiritual, psychic, dreams and stars and things like that. And so, like, how do those two things link? Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I kind of think it's a cop out. Like, I honestly think anytime someone doesn't know how to explain something, they're like, well, it's just spiritual. What the fuck is spiritual, right? Like, what does that actually mean? So if spiritual is something that is real, that means it exists in the real world. And so when we say natural world, the natural world would include this spiritual realm. It's just beyond our comprehension or beyond our ability to perceive it or whatever. And I'm all for believing that there's a lot of stuff out there that we can't currently perceive, that we don't know exists. Like, I'm all for that. But how do we get to the point, like, how is it justifiable that it's like, oh, I can't really explain it in terms of nature, therefore spiritual? Like, what does that actually mean? That to me has never, I mean, either exists or it doesn't.
Yeah.
So how do you,
like, yeah. I'm not necessarily convinced that this is the case, but I also like, I leave room for the possibility that there exists out there objects and entities, perhaps even intelligences, that are beyond our realm of comprehension.
Absolutely.
Right? Just like Richard was saying earlier, we can't really imagine outside of 3 dimensions.
Right.
That doesn't mean there aren't more out there. It just means it's beyond our means to investigate. Right. And it's very possible that these things are having some sort of effect. Like, I guess the easiest example, just think a couple hundred years ago, before we established germ theory. Germs were there, right? I mean,
and people called them things like bad spirits and vapors and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. Until such times as we realize that. And I imagine the same thing happened when people discovered that ultraviolet radiation is what causes sunburns, right? It's there. We didn't always have the means to detect it, but that's what it was. Now that we have the means to detect it, cool. Now we can draw more inferences.
And the pattern has been that humans have continued to keep finding things out. And that doesn't seem to have finished yet.
Yeah, I'm not beyond thinking that there's more out there that we're going to discover, that right now the answer to that, the best answer we can come up with is spirits, but there actually is a naturalistic explanation. We just haven't reached that level of being able to perceive it with whatever technology we have.
I like that. And I guess that's why I say I think that's calling something spiritual is a cop out. I like exactly what you just said. Hey, there might be stuff out there that we can't quite explain yet. There might even be people who actually have real precognition where they're able to tap into something, or something is speaking to them or communicating with them that actually gives them facts about the future. It doesn't make sense in the context of like, oh, it guessed that one earthquake over there, but not the 4 million others in the last 2 years, right? Like I guess the types of precognitions that we see don't make any sense in terms of any actual relevance for the human species. But sure, maybe it's out there.
Yeah.
But I just think that we should be exploring how it could happen or why, rather than saying, oh, it's just spiritual.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
No. Yeah. I mean, that's instead of assuming we have the answer, and even if we have a guess as to what the answer is, like, they had a guess. They had a guess that solar radiation causes sunburns. So you test it. Right. And you say, okay, well, if there is something coming from the sun, it seems like we should be able to block it. Right. And it turns out, yes, we can. And then it turns out that different things can block it. Right. You can get sunburned through a t-shirt. You absolutely can.
You can get sunburned on a cloudy day.
Yeah. Absolutely. So now you see it's not just direct sunlight, but there must be something else that is causing this. We must continue to experiment. So that's the point where it gets irritating for me, is when people assume that they've gotten the conclusion already. Instead of saying, I have this idea, I want to continue to explore it further using some more, forgive me for using the S term, the scientific method, to help decide, if this really does have a meaningful effect. If there is something out there, it deserves to be studied.
And
but
I think
it
if
needs
I
to be
was one of the
studied under
people
the right circumstances.
Yeah, I think if I was one of the people who, and I don't know if this is just the way that I'm sort of wired up, but like, I feel like if I was one of the people who felt, yeah, actually, maybe I do have this sort of gift or ability, I really would want to put it through its paces in order to, I wouldn't want to just kind of be like, oh yeah, that's it. And I've come to that conclusion. These are the reasons why. I would really want to delve into that and find out more about it, as much as I could about it, because then if it is something that's real that I can make active use of, for the good of myself, my family, other people in the world, I'd love to do that.
Yeah, so I think that is where people always differ, because I think for some people, just the knowing or the thinking makes them feel really, really, really good. And the idea of challenging that could actually be intimidating or frightening, or like a challenge for them, right? Like, like I just confirmed that I'm allergic to bees because I wasps. I got stung or bit the other day. And I'd been stung, bit. God, okay, wasps bite. They don't sting. But okay, so I got bit as a child and it swelled up and I had an allergic reaction. I was like maybe 5. And then for the rest of my life, no stings, nothing. So I kept thinking, I'm allergic, but I don't really know. And I'm not going to put it to the test. I'm just going to assume I'm allergic. I'm not going to, like, it makes me feel good to not test whether or not I'm allergic, right? I'm just going to say I am. Well, and then I got bit and lo and behold, I'm allergic. But it would have been really nice if I gotten bit and was like, whoa, actually, I'm not allergic, right? I have one less thing I need to worry about when I go to the park with my kids. So I'm kind of relating that to like the fear of testing, like, oh, I feel like I'm spiritual, or I feel like I have this gift. But if I test it and I find out that I'm wrong, it's going to cause me distress or sadness or pain. So I'm just not going to test it. I'm not going to put it to the test.
Or the fear that, like, if I investigate it, it'll go away. It's like I need it now to like, and I think of Christian apologists, especially ones that work with an actual ministry. Their way of feeding their family it's entirely dependent on their belief. Or if they lose belief, their way of continuing to present as if they believed. And so I wonder if I did develop some sort of power, if I knew it existed and I was able to predictably use it, I wonder how much I would want to really dig into it, from fear
it's that whole thing of, and I think we say it a lot in our house, and it's sort of a linguistic remnant of superstition. But like if it's we'd looked at the weather forecast in the morning, it said it was going to rain in the afternoon, but we get to the afternoon and it's not yet raining. I say, Oh, the weather's actually still nice, isn't it? Like my wife will be like, "Don't jinx it." Like now you've said it out loud. Now you've said it out loud. It is going to rain.
Yeah.
I think it's a similar idea, isn't it? Like, oh, maybe I've dreamt these things or I've thought these things and they've sort of come true. So let's just not push the boat out too far.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't know how much like if I did find something that I could do, I would want to test it just to make sure it's there. But again, I can imagine easily a circumstance where I wouldn't want to push my luck too much by digging too deep. That's
Yeah,
just
and
me.
it's
I'm
it's
weird.
it's the I think for so in my beasting analogy, it was more practical than emotional, right?
Yeah.
But the way that the analogy works with something like precognition is it's very emotional, right? So depending on someone's emotional attachment to that perceived ability is going to determine how closely they test it, right? And so me not being so emotionally attached to it and more curious about it, I would probably test the shit out of it, just like the two of you. Somebody else who feels really, really like emotionally attached to it, like I can empathize with my belief in God. I wanted to believe in God before I was a Christian, and I wanted to hold on to my belief in God, and I carried that into Islam. And after I left Islam, I didn't want to let go of my belief in God, but it was purely emotional, right? Um, so I can empathize with that sort of mindset of you just kind of don't want to let go of it because it's something that you put value into or that you want this to be true. Um, so yeah, I can kind of see why a lot of people who claim to have things like precognition or psychic abilities, how they would be afraid of skepticism or afraid of being put to the test.
And anecdotal sort of stories are really powerful as well in terms of reinforcing things. So like,
Yeah.
oh, my friend, whatever they're called, had a dream last night about this, this, and this, and I know she did the week before, or he correctly predicted this and like people just saying it to other people sort of bigs up that sort of thing with that person,
Reinforces
isn't
it.
it? Yeah, it's that
Yeah.
like social pressure.
Yeah. So we're kind of coming up on the end of the show. We still have a few more minutes left. So we can chit chat about maybe one more subject or one more aspect of it.
Okay.
So before we do closing
sorry.
statements, I was going to ask you if there was anything else on your list.
Yeah, okay. So far this episode has sounded like three sci-fi writers are getting together trying to figure out what the premise for their next movie is going to be.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Let's do
that's
it.
awesome. That's awesome. First of all, so I have one last idea to present to you guys.
Okay.
Now, Richard, you brought up earlier that we're used to thinking in 3 dimensions. That's fine, right? That's just how we are. We're also used to thinking about temporal cause and effect happening in only one direction.
Right.
What if it wasn't? Because every time we try to build some sort of computer model for predicting the universe, we also know that there are so many variables that exist. We can't possibly account for them all, which is why we can test and test and test all we want to. Eventually, it comes down to a practical, real life, a practical test, right? So, what if it is possible that an event in the future actually affects events in the past? We can't think like that, but that doesn't mean that it's impossible.
Right.
Now what's running
I'm
under
just
your head
processing
is
what you
you're
said.
running through a lot of possibilities. It's like, okay, so like pushing over dominoes, you have to start with a push here before these other dominoes fall. But where I'm coming from is the fact that you're thinking about that as dominoes at all says that we're too limited in our thinking.
Yeah.
And we need to be thinking about other ways that future events could affect past events. I'm not even saying it's possible. I'm just saying that right now I can't prove that it's not possible.
Yeah, I kind of like that because I was thinking about like precognition too, and I was like, well, is it possible that precognition can work for the past? And a lot of people say, well, no, because the past has already happened. So you just read a history book and you can validate that it happened. But what about something like precognition about knowing a fact that nobody else knows that can't be verified, like whether or not Jesus actually lived or was an actual person, or what dinosaurs actually look like and what their actual skin color was or their feather colors were or whatever. Like those kinds of things that we don't have access to, that we just don't know. Is precognition possible going backwards as well as forwards?
Post-cognition then, therefore?
Wow.
Post-cognition. I think I've actually heard it called that before, post-cognition. And
All right, okay.
yeah, and it's like if we could go back in time and validate something, would something like that be possible?
But then again, that's that in that sort of unverifiable territory, isn't it?
Right now, we don't
right.
have the means to detect it. We don't have the means to look in the future to see what could happen over there that could affect things that are going on in the past. Like right now, there's no reason to believe that it exists. But I guess where I'm coming from is I don't see a reason to conclude that it does not exist and it's not possible.
And we know so little about time, right? Like
Yeah.
all we know about time is that it is sort of how we experience things, right? But we don't really know the nature of it. And we know that we can perceive the slowdown and speed up of time just by like space travel, for example, that an astronaut, the faster you approach the speed of light, the slower you perceive time to be. Such that if a person were to travel at the speed of light, like say that they had a twin or whatever, that whole experiment, okay, they had a twin stays on Earth, they travel by light speed, they come back.
They age differently,
and they're differently aged.
Shout out to Doctor Who episode in series 10, World Enough and Time, where that absolutely happened. There were a 4-mile long spaceship. One side of it was backing away from a black hole, but it was the whole plot point of this brilliant episode. Go watch it.
Oh yeah, I love Doctor Who.
The whole movie Interstellar, which tried really hard to get a lot of details right.
Yes. Yeah. So that really tells me that there's a lot that we don't know about time. So that's where I say, like, when I was talking about the whole being that exists outside of time, my mind just can't comprehend it. That does not necessarily mean that it doesn't exist or that it's not possible.
Yeah, I just can't think that way. I'm not trained to think that way, and that's not our fault. I mean, we exist in a
human brains are basically shit.
Yeah. It's like that. What was that movie Arrival, where the aliens experience time outside of our typical time, so they would see flashes of the future or the past. Like they see it as like a cloud. It's more nebulous, right? Whereas we see time very linearly. So they were trying to help us and deliver a message to us because they already knew something that we didn't know. And it's not because they existed outside of time and not because time doesn't exist or whatever, but because they experience time differently than us. And that to me is fascinating. Like there's only one time. Time is just time. But how you experience it can be different. Like that to me is fascinating.
We all need to be sci-fi writers. That's it.
Yes.
We've done nothing but talk about writing prompts for the past hour and a half. I'm not even a writer, and I'm tempted to go on here and say, let's put a story together.
Yeah, I do this at almost the end of almost every episode, especially with a guest, but we're gonna have to like double up on this one. Like this, like we do have to get going. We're a little bit over our time, and that's fine. A lot of our episodes go a little bit over, but I think that just the conversation of time in general is just as fascinating, if not more, than precognition. I think I could talk longer on it.
Well, we know what your next 3 episodes are going to be about. Who knew when we started this episode that you would know about? Oh, sorry, that was me. I keep trying to bring it back to precognition. Like we had no idea when we started this we'd be having.
Oh no, I totally
knew.
I knew exactly what Puck was going to bring up. Like none of this.
And what Laura was going to add onto the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
This has been a blast. I don't want it to be over yet, but I understand
it's not quite over yet because we're going to do our last closing thoughts.
Okay.
And I have mine in my head, but what do you guys think? What is your big takeaway about precognition? Like either your big opinion on it or the thing you learned during the show. What's your takeaway?
I mean, one of my thoughts as you were just saying that was that it seems in a lot of ways to be one of the weaker sort of supernatural claims, the one that's more easily sort of in your face, falsifiable, the one that's more easily sort of understandable in lots of other ways because it's done by like showmen, you know, in terms of like performances and whatever else as a trick. And I think, yeah, you can really easily test it. So I certainly don't hold much value in the whole supernatural side of things and those areas that we talked about. However, I just want to encourage our audience to pre-order the sci-fi novel that I'm going to write after this episode.
And don't forget to see the movie that we are brainstorming as usual.
Yeah, Laura thinks we're recording another episode after this, but no, I'm writing.
Nope, we're hitting. Yeah, I'm gonna go contact my Hollywood contacts and get the movie rights. Okay, so Puck, what are your closing thoughts?
My biggest problem with anything like this are people who unjustly profit from it. And when you think about internet psychics or Mistress Cleo or whatever, number two, after being able to talk to deceased relatives, which is beyond the scope of this episode, and I'm sure you guys will dig into it another time. Number two is divination, trying to figure out if I take certain actions, will I be successful in my job? Will I be successful in my relationships?
Right.
This is a multi-billion-dollar, I would go so far as to say fraudulent industry.
Yeah.
And to have proper skepticism about whether or not somebody can accurately predict the future will probably put this industry in, let's hope, divert those billions of dollars to something that could probably be a lot more helpful.
Yeah, that's really sad and unfortunate. Yeah. So my big takeaway. So Puck had said something earlier, and I wanted to just touch on it. But he had said something about like, being skeptical. Like if you do believe, being willing to put it to the test, not draw final conclusions. Like, okay, so you witness this thing, and you're pretty sure you know what it is, therefore it's spiritual, and maybe not jumping to that conclusion. But I kind of want to expand that in both directions. Like there should be healthy skepticism that exists somewhere in the middle. So if you're one of those people that are like, precognition does not exist, or UFOs do not exist, or ghosts do not exist, that's not skepticism. That's cynicism, right? Or it's drawing equally unfounded conclusions with equally bad data. So what we do know is there's no data to support something like precognition. And so I would urge everybody, when you're talking about being skeptical, also be open-minded. So like what Puck was saying, hey, there might actually be an avenue toward precognition. There might be ways to exist outside of our temporal reality, right? And we just don't know it yet. So my whole thing is to make sure that, especially with something as nebulous as precognition or psychicness in general, is to be skeptical in both directions. Like don't draw any hard conclusions that aren't followed by the data or aren't supported by the data.
Here's an example. So, and I know we're limited on time.
No worries.
I'm going to again get the details of this wrong, like I always do with anything I actually refer to, because I only have scant pieces of memory from various things I know about. But there was like a thing, I think maybe the Hubble telescope, where they pointed it at a blank patch of space where like a teeny tiny bit in the sky where they couldn't see anything, and they kept taking in light, and they just saw like thousands and thousands and thousands of galaxies in this teeny tiny space of black that they didn't know were there before. And I think skepticism for me is not just saying no to everything, but looking for those empty bits of space and seeing what could be there, like with possibility and openness, but also asking the right questions when it's needed as well. And I think this is one of those times where it'd be really easy to just say, people predicting the future, no. But it's one of those where, like you were saying, Puck, like we just don't know, do we? And it's something that may be at one stage or another, might be something that's realistic or doable or physically possible, and we've always got to kind of keep that.
And then the episode number 326 of Skeptic Hangout is going to be the ethical considerations. Now that we know that precognition is possible, what are the ethical considerations of legislating based on knowing what's going to happen in the future?
Nice. I like it. Yeah.
Episode
and that's testable. Yeah. That's testable, by the way. All right, everybody. We are hitting against a hard timeline. The video is going to cut out. So thank you everybody who's listening right now, or viewing on YouTube, watching our lovely faces chitty chat. Make sure you guys hit us up on Facebook and keep the conversation going. I think there's just way too much to talk about here, so let's throw some convo up on Facebook and keep it rolling. In the meantime, thank you guys all for joining us. We're not going to do our formal outro because I'm just too afraid I'm going to butcher it.
Yeah, my brain can't work out how it would work.
Yeah. But I know there's something about staying skeptical and questioning and all that good stuff. So yeah, stay on that. And we will catch you next time. Bye. And for those of you listening, Puck's doing his little heart.